I mean, so you have written this article for us on rationalreligion.co.uk. It's called The Happiness Deception, How Society Sets Us Up to Fail. And it's really kind of on this kind of topic, right?
Yeah. So I kind of started it off by talking about Michael Phelps.
Yeah.
And
should we have a look at the quotes from there? Yeah.
Michael Phelps looks a lot like Leonardo DiCaprio.
We know who's going to play him in the movie.
And what's Michael Phelps doing just like showing us dollar bills? I mean, that's not on, is it?
Well, he's very rich. I mean, he is as well, but also Michael Phelps. He won several gold medals, like a lot. He's the most successful Olympian in history.
Really?
Yeah.
So
in any sport?
Get on to the full quote.
Sport.
Oh my God.
Okay. And he talked in 2018, I think it was after his retirement, where he talked about his Olympic triumphs.
Yeah.
And this is not just him. This is actually many, many Olympians have said similar things to this. And he said, after every Olympics, I fell into a major state of depression. He said that in fall 2008, just weeks after he'd won a record 8 gold medals, he was smoking. He later apologized, called his behavior regrettable. And he said drugs were a way of running from whatever it was I wanted to run from. It would be just me self-medicating myself, basically daily, to try and fix whatever it was that I was trying to run away from.
Okay, so he'd been caught smoking cannabis after he won massively in 2008. Yes. That was when he kind of really became a mega star, right? Okay, so he's saying that that's the way of me self-medicating myself from what? Okay, then how did it continue?
And then, then he talked about all of his Olympic wins. So after 2004, 2008 and 2012, and he describes what happened afterwards as being like explosions. So he said that he didn't want to be in the sport anymore after the 2012 games. He didn't want to be alive anymore. And he also said that he would be sitting alone for 3 to 5 days in his bedroom, not eating, barely sleeping, and just not wanting to be alive. And now he says, I'm extremely thankful I did not take my life. But it's interesting that he had these moments, these lows, immediately after the biggest highs and the biggest successes that he had worked all his life for.
So you're a psychiatrist. What's going on here?
Well, I don't think you need to be a psychiatrist.
You're a spiritual psychiatrist. What's going on here?
I think, in a way, Michael Phelps must have spent absolutely hours every single day training throughout his whole life to become an Olympic swimmer.
Do they have to work?
To become a gold medalist.
They have to
to become the most successful
Finally
Olympian
got those bands off his arms.
of all time. And then he realized that actually winning that gold medal didn't perhaps bring him the joy that he expected or the lasting contentment and fulfillment. And also, possibly when he won those gold medals, he was thinking, well, what next? Like, I've achieved everything there is to achieve in my field. I've done what Stephen Fry said. I've kind of gone after my, my own like purpose in life, my own passion. I followed my passion, been as successful as it's possible for a human being to be, and still wasn't happy.
There's a great quote from Matt Damon, actually, where it'd be good if we had the clip.
Yourself and Ben Affleck, the night of the winning Oscars and everything, because I think we just saw a picture. There you are. How old were you there?
I'm 27 and Ben's 25.
Well, you look even younger.
Yeah.
That night must have sent you into a tailspin. Did you go crazy that actual night? Did you go nuts?
Actually, I remember very clearly going back with my girlfriend at the time, and we went to her house and she went to sleep. But I couldn't sleep. I was just kind of still buzzing and was sitting there, and I remember very clearly looking at that award, and I suddenly had this kind of thing wash over me where I thought, imagine chasing that and not getting it, and getting it finally in your 80s or your 90s with all of life behind you, and realizing what an unbelievable waste of your, you know what I mean? Because it can't, it's got to be, you know what I mean? It's not,
it can't be good enough.
Right. It can't fill you up. It will never, if that's a hole that you have, that won't fill it, right? And I felt so like blessed to have that awareness at 27.
To learn it at that age.
To learn it, and because I wouldn't have known it unless I knew it, you know what I mean?
You're right, like imagine figuring it out at 80, that would be...
How hard, and I literally, like my heart broke for a second. It's like I imagined another one of me, you know, an old man kind of going like, oh my God, where did my life go? What have I done? And then it's over, you know?
He realized that it was, okay, it's a prize. The ceremony goes and he's just alone in his house with this gold medal thing, with this gold prize. And he was reflecting, because he's a smart guy, that there are many people in Hollywood that are still waiting for this and are working in their careers for this Oscar. And he knows that they're going to have that crash after they get it and realize this wasn't the point of life. I shouldn't have done this. And he had that early. So he was fortunate in that sense.
There's a popularized saying, isn't there, that when you try and achieve something, or when you want to do something that will make you happy, then look to those who have already achieved it and see how happy they are.
Oh, wow.
And I think, we can see that obviously it's a good thing to kind of excel in whatever field you try and do, but to make it the basis of your happiness and to try and think that it will give you all the contentment you need, you can see that it won't, because so many people who have actually achieved those things haven't.
This goes contrary to, maybe we didn't want to touch on this, but it's kind of the elephant in the room, I think, is that you have a big online contingent of speakers these days, especially the Andrew Tate crowd, who talk about how you should try and conquer the world. Okay, you should try and conquer all materialistic.
Even Jordan Peterson has a similar kind of way of talking about things, right?
Yeah.
Become the monster.
Become the monster and dominate over your fears and achieve your goals. And there's certainly a positive aspect to that, which is that you should try and be the best version of yourself, and you should try and be successful in all aspects of life. And Islam is not such a religion which teaches asceticism. One of the major prayers in the Quran is, oh, Allah grants the best of this life and the best of the hereafter, and save us from the punishment of the fire. What I think Andrew Tate probably went through, despite telling everybody, dominate, get the most beautiful woman, get the highest paying job, get the fastest Lamborghinis, everything. Well, I think he must have realized, because he's a fairly intelligent chap, right? He must have actually had this experience as well. Because why is it that this guy now turned towards religion? Why is it that he then turned and thought, oh, well, actually, maybe I become religious? What is the impetus for becoming religious after you've become a multimillionaire? It's intrinsically related probably to the fact that you get there, you reach the top, and you realize, oh, right, okay, so is this it? Right? I've got fast cars, but at the end of the day, you still wake up every morning. You're still a human being. You still have, your base needs would be met at even a much lower threshold of materialistic fulfillment.
So what do you think him being in prison? I mean, we can't speculate for him in particular. Well, let's speculate for what would happen to someone in his position that then goes into prison and suddenly loses access to all that thing. How do you think that would affect them?
Well, it depends on them. I think that if he is an intelligent man, not only from an intellectual perspective, but also from a spiritual perspective to some extent, everybody's got their foibles and failings and everything, but people can change as well. If he does look at it with a spiritual eye, he will perhaps realize what this is, or what this could be interpreted as, which is that it's an opportunity for him to recognize that a lot of the teaching that he was giving to men, which is that make the purpose of your life to dominate others in all materialistic spheres, is actually wrong advice, right? That's not actually the route to happiness. And that actually the route to happiness is finding peace with God, right? Because the reality is that God could finish you at any moment.
Yeah.
It's not like you have a guaranteed 85 years. You could die the next day, right? Or you could be thrown in prison the next day for something you did or did not do, right? And all that could be taken away from you. And so this is in actual fact something that everybody can reflect on and learn from and realize, which is that you've got to have, if you're just, let me put it like this for the Andrew Tate fans out there. And there are some things I think he says which are quite insightful with respect to gender dynamics, and we can get to them in other videos. But this is something I think which is very important to say to people, which is that if you're striving to dominate people in this life, you've set your sights too low. Okay? You've actually set your sights so pathetically low, right, that in the Quran and in Islam and in Islamic terminology, you were described as a worm of the earth, right? That's what you are. You're a worm who just subsists on material stuff, and ultimately you'll perish, and all that you are will have died within 50 years anyway. So that's the perspective of somebody who makes materialism the focus of their life. Those who really understand Islam and really understand God, they will try and seek to transcend death through their good deeds, in the sense that they recognize that they will transcend death and they are preparing for their next life, right? And that is their real goal, because they're not interested in these materialistic, egotistical battles between individuals. They're looking at the day of judgment when all mankind will be arrayed, And
I guess the interesting thing is those people that have truly dominated the world throughout history have been those that have submitted to God and have been prophets of God.
Yes.
And they are also the people that have been able to deal with suffering the best. So if we look at the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he lost so many children,
over 10, wasn't it?
Over 10 children, and had so many different kind of sufferings and struggles and difficulties in his life. If we think about the Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, even when he was about to be crucified, it was him that was comforting his disciples, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And so, there's a quote from the Bible in Psalms that says, even if I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, talking about God being with them. And I think that's really the way to kind of transcend the world in a way. It's to know that God is with you, to have a relationship with God, and to be able to walk even through difficult situations and be able to come out of them with your faith intact and with,
The if I may, the necessary factor to that, to attain that though, is humility.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that God's not going to walk with you if you think you're all that. Because
so it's not self-affirmation in the mirror every morning about how awesome you are.
No, it's not. It's actually it's actually stems from a place of recognition of your total worthlessness. Now, that again runs contrary to the kind of the sayings that people will say, from the kind of motivational crowd. But actually, that's the secret.
Self-improvement people.
The secret is not telling yourself you're nothing and then following it up with nothing else. The secret is actually confessing before God that you're nothing and that God has all power and that you seek the refuge and protection of God, ultimately. So it's not that you're going out into the wilderness naked, right? You're going out there with God. So you couldn't be better protected and better shielded. But at the end of the day, God's not going to walk with somebody who's got a big chip on their shoulder and a big ego, because God expects you. What is it? How are you going to walk with God if you can't even recognize God? I mean, the way to recognize God is in actual fact, to recognize that God is beyond you. He's actually far beyond you. You will never know God. You will never, in actual fact, even reach God, because He is infinite, right? And you're a finite being. So I think that step and recognizing your own nothingness along with God's perfect absolutism, that's an actual fact which brings true peace, true contentment. But if you think that you're all that, and then you approach God saying, well, with this kind of ego in you, when realistically, you're a piece of dust.
Yeah.
You're just a piece of dust in front of God. Not even a piece of dust, actually. You're nothing. You're a zero.
Yeah.
So, I mean, then at the end of the day, God's not going to come near to you, because why would God want to come near to somebody like that?
I mean, I always reflect that, we don't control our own heartbeat. Even if you look at the, electrophysiology of the heart, we don't really understand how the heart beats, but we have no control over it. And that is the basis of our entire life, moment to moment. So whatever capacities we think we have, it's dependent upon something which we have no control over. And the capacities that we exercise, we generally were given. And even if we exercise them half the time, our intentions all of the time only have an effect through God's grace as well. Again, we are really absolutely nothing, and that does go against the self-improvement motivational crowd.
But that's because they don't have a belief in God, so they have to tell themselves, they have to artificially inflate their balloon, because if they deflate it, there's nothing to catch them.
Yeah, so they're living their lives trying to
function,
feel in control, trying to feel as
have a sense of meaning.
A sense of meaning and purpose, but also control over their lives. But then if they think about it, they realize that actually they have no control, and they also have no external being or higher power.
So it's a coping mechanism. Yeah. Self-improvement philosophy is basically a coping mechanism with meaninglessness. Whereas if you have a truly theistic and spiritual outlook, then you have a purpose, and that purpose is nearness to God, is a love of God, knowledge and worship of God, because that is the purpose that you were born to fulfill, and that is the only thing in which you can ever find true contentment.
And it transcends death.
Either way, it's going to transcend death, for better or for worse.
I mean, you look at, for example, what reminds me of Hazrat Khalid bin Walid, the man, the general who effectively humbled the entire Persian Empire of 1500, 2,000-year-old empire. He humbled in a year and a half before going on to smash the Romans, right? He started with an army, and they didn't really get replenished. And he started with an army of like 20,000 soldiers, and they just fought battle after battle after battle after battle after battle after battle. They didn't go back. They didn't get replenished. They just fought all of the Persian armies and defeated them. And one of the things he would say to the he would write to the opposing camp when they were about to fight. He said to them, look, please, these are our surrender terms before we fight. So, you don't have to fight us if you agree to these terms. And he would say in that, he would say, we are a people who love death as you love life. And that's a terrifying statement if you're fighting people who actually believe that. And the reason is because death for them was not the end. It is only a portal. And they knew it. They realized it. Because God spoke to these people. These were companions of the prophet, peace be upon him. So when you attain that level of knowledge whereby you are not seeing things with a 50-year eye or a 100-year eye, you're looking at things with the eye of eternity.
Yeah.
Who's going to care about making the Lamborghini and your Ferrari? It's pathetic.
Yeah. And I guess those people that are not afraid of death are probably quite difficult to kill. So it makes them courageous and valiant and able to fight in the battlefield.
They'll take those risks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's absolutely right. They will fight with the intention of dying. And this is what the Promised Messiah, the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, said, is that these people would go forth to battle, having said goodbye to their family members, committed to not returning. Committed to not, they're like, I've never seen my family again. And they don't think about them anymore. They go forth, right? So the question is, how are you going to, one, that's an extremely powerful way of being successful in the world as well, that kind of commitment from a worldly perspective. But also it just kind of is so much, it just shows such a grander perspective on life than this kind of materialistic worm of the earth behavior.
Well, even then, I mean, yes, they're not seeing their family again, but ultimately they believe that they'll meet in the afterlife.
Yes.
And the legacy of blessings that they will leave for their family is so much greater than their presence. You're present for your family, but if you had the opportunity to go and, give your life in the way of God, the blessings that would attract to God would have a far greater effect than your mere presence.
Yeah.